So if you follow my main channel for news and rumors, then you may have seen my video where I spoke about Cameron Grimes and Bron Breakker getting called up to the main roster. Yeah, it sounds like it's about to actually happen. It sounds like WWE is ready to call him up to the main roster, and I see a lot of mixed responses in my comment section. I've seen a lot of people say that perhaps, just maybe, Bron Breakker is not ready for the main roster. And then I have other people that are super supportive of the vision. They think Bron Breakker is the future of the company. And to be honest with you, I think so, but I could see WWE making a mistake here. And I'm not talking about anything that's like a revolutionary thing, right? We have seen typically guys that have been programmed to be the future of WWE, and they were forced down everybody's throats only for the WWE universe to completely reject them. And because they've rejected them, they have a harder time getting over. We saw this with John Cena. No matter how often people didn't like him, WWE made it very clear John Cena was the guy. They did the same exact thing right when Roman Reigns came around. Honestly, it wasn't until the whole Bloodline thing where a lot of people started to truly accept and value Roman Reigns' skill. So can I see WWE making the same mistake with Bron Breakker? Yeah, historically speaking, they've done it before. It's going to happen again and again and again. And yes, even though Triple H is the one running creative, WWE as a company is always looking for that next guy to really take over. Now, I'm not saying they're going to force Bron Breakker down everybody's throats right away. That is very well a possibility, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I just see this being more of a situation where if they don't do anything right away with Bron Breakker that makes him feel important, people will not give a shit about Bron Breakker. And there's a ton of rumors right now that WWE is going to call him up with Cameron Grimes and a variety of other NXT talent. And the way that they're going to do it is potentially by doing the WWE draft. And if that's the case, that could be an issue. I've always been one of those guys that enjoyed seeing vignettes for people being called up. You know, I like the surprise factor at times, but I think WWE and AEW has relied so much on surprises instead of properly building a debut or a return. In this case, Bron Breakker has been on the main roster before because he was involved with the NXT Championship when Dolph Ziggler was getting involved. And I thought that was cool, honestly. I really did. I've just noticed throughout time that when you don't do vignettes and you're not prepping your audience for someone, especially if they don't watch NXT, you tend to see a lot of people fail on the main roster. And don't get me wrong, there's been times where they've aired vignettes for talent before, then they arrive and the audience doesn't care either. So there's two things to this. There's two components to this video. One, how should they debut Bron Breakker? And then two, how would I fantasy book Bron Breakker's first year in WWE's main roster? For one, I think WWE is going to 1000% draft Bron Breakker as the top 5 pick. I think they're going to do it in a way that is very surprising. I think they could very well go into the system of doing a, obviously the brand split, the WWE draft. If you have Bron Breakker in the top 5 picks, it just shows that they really mean business, right? If WWE does this, though, they're not going to be able to have vignettes for Bron Breakker because the pick itself would have to be a surprise. But also at the same time, too, I could see WWE propping him up as a big timer in the draft, right? But then if I'm fantasy booking Bron Breakker's arrival on the main roster, you got to have this guy do some things that haven't been done before. And it's kind of tough in a situation where in WWE, ultimately, everybody has kind of been doing something relatively similar to what's been done in the past, right? A lot of things are recycled and repeated. It's a rinse repeat type of situation for wrestling. So with Bron Breakker, if you're doing the typical monstrous, he's going to just kind of like the Ryback style push, right? Huge win streak. Like if that's kind of the goal that they have for Bron Breakker, I don't think that makes sense. But also if Bron Breakker, let's say, comes out on the draft as the number 1 pick, shocking absolutely everybody, Bron Breakker being that rookie automatically puts a lot of pressure on him. So I wouldn't want to do that in the sense of for the sense of long-term success. What I would do, instead of drafting Bron Breakker, instead of going the route of having him introduced in the draft, I would just do vignettes, right? We know that he's leaving NXT. He's going to be defending his belt at Stand and Deliver against Carmelo Hayes. I would do a video package. I would make a spectacle out of it on NXT. I would make a spectacle out of it on Raw or SmackDown. So when after Stand and Deliver, the Tuesday after, I would have Bron Breakker say his goodbyes to the locker room and just announce that he's going up to the main roster. And what I would do if I were WWE would do training videos of Bron Breakker in the gym, training every single week. You don't have to do this. It doesn't have to be long-winded. It doesn't have to be 6 months or 7 months like the Veer vignettes, right? But you can kind of do this thing of like Bron Breakker preparing for the main roster. When he gets to the main roster, being the new guy, you can have people who are rubbed the wrong way, right? You can have some people who aren't rubbed the wrong way. You could have Bron Breakker do a couple squash matches. You can have Bron Breakker work a couple competitive matches. After the first, 3 to 4 weeks, what I would do at that point is have Bron Breakker then get interrupted by his first feud. If I am WWE and I really want Bron Breakker to be successful without forcing him down everybody's throats, I'd have him lose to the guy that is his first feud. I know this sounds crazy, but imagine if Bobby Lashley and Bron Breakker were to feud for the first time. Some people might say that he's buried, but I would like to just throw this out there. Imagine Bron Breakker is impressive. We saw the vignettes of him training and getting prepared and looking great. We know he's coming to Raw or SmackDown. And then imagine after he squashes a couple people, maybe it's Ziggler, maybe they revisit that, maybe it's Mustafa Ali. I don't know. The names aren't that important. It could be Tozawa. It could be a variety of people. Once he gets a couple matches, some wins or whatever, finally after his match, he cuts a promo. He gets interrupted by Bobby Lashley. Imagine Bobby Lashley cuts off Bron Breakker. And I'm telling you guys, they let them wrestle, right? Bron Breakker and Bobby Lashley just wrestling. Good 20-minute match or something. I don't know. It doesn't even have to be 20 minutes. But you could have Bobby Lashley beat Bron Breakker, right? And it doesn't even have to be Bobby Lashley. It just has to be somebody of that magnitude. Someone of somewhat of a big name, right? And they beat Bron Breakker, and you kind of do like the, hey, kid, you're going to be all right type of thing, right? Like shake his hand after the match and just have a little bit of mutual respect. That's what I would do. In the first year, Bron Breakker should not be touching gold. He should not be getting involved in the Intercontinental Championship, the U.S. Championship, or any other championship that's possibly, being retired or introduced to the company. With WWE doing the brand split and possibly changing the championships, I'd have Bron Breakker stay away from that. I would also not have Bron Breakker be a complete babyface, and I would not have him be a complete heel. I would 1000% have him be a tweener. For the first year that he's in the company, have him be a tweener. Have him ruffle some feathers backstage. Have him wrestle some babyfaces. Have him, this guy doesn't want to be, we don't want him forced down everybody's throats, but we want everybody to know that he means business. Have him win. Have him lose. Just be logical through it all. I'm not saying it has to be this drawn out crazy process, but if you want Bron Breakker to be successful, the less you force him down everybody's throats, the better it is. So the idea of him doing like this peaceful transfer from NXT to the main roster, and you don't have to build some crazy 50-match win streak or some bullshit like that, because at that point, it's going to become very obvious that people are just simply not, they're not going to be interested in that. But if you have him wrestle somebody like Bobby Lashley, right? Or it could be anybody. It could be Braun Strowman. It could be anybody who needs that big singles win and they lose. Like if Bron Breakker loses to that individual, but they kind of, he kind of gets dapped up a little bit. Like, hey, man, like you're going to be all right. You're going to be a star one day. You know what I mean? I think people will see far more value in that. And then the next feud and the next feud, then you start building more feuds for him. Then you could start building momentum with him long term. If you rush it, it doesn't work. And I know that for a fact because we've seen historically, whenever they try to force something down your throats, we all reject it.